Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. It has certainly been a minute, but the Oregon Ducks commitment sweatshirt comes back on as Dan Lanning, the Oregon Ducks, making a late addition in the transfer portal window as former Ole Miss and Tulane defensive back Jadon Canady committing to the Oregon Ducks. Now, I think the most fascinating conversation you have to get in with this kid is, where is he going to play in this Oregon Ducks secondary? Because you look at his college football career, both at Tulane and at Ole Miss, this dude's done it all. And this is about as versatile of a defensive back as you're going to find in the landscape of college football. Has played one season as a boundary cornerback, played his true freshman year as a nickel for Tulane, has played a little bit of safety as well. He can slot in just about anywhere you want in the defensive backfield. And he's coming into an Oregon secondary that's absolutely loaded. And that's probably what I love most about this commitment. I was 24 hours ago running my mouth in terms of, I don't know how Oregon's going to add any more players into the secondary with how loaded this defensive backfield is. Jadon Canady committing to Oregon tells me he is not afraid of any competition. He fully recognizes that it's going to be hard to get on the football field in the secondary with this Oregon Ducks program. He's all for that challenge going into 2025. Want to first talk about Jadon Canady and talk about what he has done during his college football career, then talk about where he's going to play for the Oregon Ducks in 2025. Now, before we get into it, as always, just want to say thank you to you guys and to the Oregon fans, not only the Oregon fans who rock with the boys during the fall as we talk this team on the football field, but it's been just as fun to talk this team in terms of the talent acquisition department, what they've done in the portal, what they are continuing to do on the high school recruiting trail. For those who rock with the boys all 12 months a year, can't thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into Jadon Canady. Let's just start with the pure experience that he brings to the table. He's played over 1,800 career snaps, both at Ole Miss in the SEC and at Tulane to start his career. This Oregon Ducks secondary is very, very talented, but it's also pretty dang young. I mean, you have a couple safeties, Peyton Woodyard, Aaron Flowers, Kingston Lopa, that they're only going into their second years of college football. None of them have played a ton of football during their collegiate careers. You look at the boundary cornerback spot, you have some veterans and a guy like, you could just pull up this depth chart and look at it. You have some veterans, guys like Theron Johnson that played a lot at Northwestern, guy like Jaleel Florence that's played a decent amount at Oregon. But largely, you look at this secondary and say it's really talented, but it's also pretty dang young. And injecting a guy that not only brings a ton of versatility to the room, but also a guy that brings a lot of experience, that makes sense for the Oregon Ducks. Now, looking at Jadon Canady in his career, one, you love what he can do in coverage. He was targeted 45 times in the SEC in 2024, gave up only 23 catches. And so whether he's playing nickel, whether he's playing safety, you have a guy that can match up in man coverage. And you look at where Oregon fell short in 2024, what the biggest project I think for Oregon is going into 2025 is, hey, we need guys that can match up with the playmakers that Ohio State has or a team like Texas has. You want to win national championships, which is the goal for Oregon under Dan Lanning every single offseason. You got to have the guys to match up with elite playmakers. Adding a guy like Jadon Canady, who even if he plays safety, can be very strong in man coverage, that's huge. Because you look at the safeties last year for Oregon, they were solid football players, Tasheem Johnson, Kobe Savage, but specifically a guy like Kobe Savage just couldn't match up athletically with some of the difference makers that a team like Ohio State had. Now, the question mark, and he's been really productive too. That's probably worth noting, right? He's not only played a lot of football, but over 115 tackles, 17 pass breakups, 2 interceptions. He's played a lot of football, been very productive as well. Here's the interesting conversation here. I said, all right, where does Jadon Canady slot in here? I think nickel is probably the position that, one, he seems to grade out the best. And number two is probably that missing piece where I had Theron Johnson playing nickel for Oregon in 2025 just because I couldn't fit him into the boundary cornerback room for Oregon going into next year. Jadon Canady probably does that. You probably move Theron Johnson back to that boundary cornerback spot. But I also think it's, a very real possibility if you wanted to kind of play around with this depth chart in live time to maybe say, hey, Peyton Woodyard, Aaron Flowers, maybe you need another year. Kingston Lopa need another year. We could slot Jadon Canady into that safety spot and then just move Theron Johnson back into your starting nickel. One of the things you've seen just routinely for Dan Lanning since he's been at Oregon is, hey, we are going to create an insane amount of competition. If you want to start for the Oregon Ducks in the fall, you are going to have to beat out a lot of really good football players. You see that in the defensive backfield. You see that in the wide receiver room. And Dan Lanning is attracting guys to the program that they're not afraid of the competition. You look at these high school kids. I mean, it's like they don't transfer out when you bring in some transfer portal additions. They just go battle for a starting spot. You look at these transfer portal guys that look, if Jadon Canady did not want competition and wanted an easier play to play at the Power 4 level, he could have gone to some other programs. The way these kids are wired that Dan Lanning is attracting to Eugene, it's, for lack of better terms, rare. You don't see a lot of guys that are willing to go battle for a spot. They want to be handed one. That's not what's going on with Oregon. And as much as you'll see some outside voices talk about Oregon using the transfer portal too much and squeezing out their high school talent, what high school talent is being squeezed out of this program? You don't see good players that Oregon likes leave the program. They just stay and battle it out for starting spots. And that's how you want a premier program to run. You look at the Nick Saban years at Alabama. You look at Kirby Smart in Georgia. This is probably where Dan Lanning got this train of thought. We are going to stack as much talent on our team as possible. And that ensures that whoever starts for us in the fall are damn good football players. That's what you're seeing happen with Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks. We'll see where Jadon Canady slots in. Again, could legitimately slot in at all three positions. Could play safety, boundary cornerback, nickel. Brings a lot of experience into the room. Hard to knock this one. I don't even know if he starts, if I'm being quite frank. There's a very real shot that some of these younger guys, Aaron Flowers, Peyton Woodyard, got that mixed up. Trey McNutt, Kingston Lopa, those guys could beat out a guy like Jadon Canady. What happens if they do? They can play because Jadon Canady can play too, and he showed that during his time in the SEC at Ole Miss. Another good addition for Oregon. Again, they're bringing in a solid amount of portal additions, but they're all really good football players, and that's what you're looking for. We'll sign out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys. We'll talk to y'all later.